This panel is going to discuss the transformative potential of genomics in the context of how it works alongside the NHS and the life sciences sector. To be honest, I'm not sure how we're going to put it better than Dave just has, but nevertheless, this is going to be a great discussion, given particularly a lot of the specific work that is going on with the 10-year plan, the life sciences sector plan, and the key roles that both you, Sue, and Vin have in shaping that work. And we want to focus, I think, a little bit on how genomics is helping the NHS become more predictive, preventative, more personalised, delivering outcomes for patients, but while also fostering innovation and economic growth. So I think we should just dive straight in. Sue, you've talked a lot about the increasing role that genomics can play in mainstream healthcare, that it is already playing, as we've been hearing today, and how it can play a role in up to half of all healthcare encounters by 2035. Can you bring that to life for us a little bit from the specific perspective that you have as Chief Scientific Officer?
Yes, of course, Nicola. And this is a figure that we've been working on together with Rich Scott and Genomics England. So it's a genomics ecosystem informed view of 50% of all healthcare interventions by 2035 being in some way genomically informed. Interestingly, 1.7 million healthcare episodes happen every day in the NHS. And so therefore, if we look towards 2035, what that means is we will need to take a more proactive and preemptive approach to genomic testing. And so rather than the reactive testing we do today on the basis of symptomatology or cancer presentations. So the future will be made up of both our move towards population health and more population testing. The newborn sequencing program is a good example of that, the adult population study that you're going to be leading on, but also how we can actually expand into the population, the use of pharmacogenomics as a more preemptive way of preventing adverse drug reactions in those that take medicines. And we know at the moment that there's a 2.2 billion spend on adverse drug reaction costs within the NHS. So there's prevention, and that includes the use of pharmacogenomics, much more targeted population health interventions, so inherited risks such as for familial predisposition syndromes to cancer or to BRCA testing. It also will mean the use of polygenic risk scores when we've actually got the evidence and the pathways for the adoption of polygenic risk scores. But more than that, I think it will mean, in terms of any whole genome that is generated, that we use that lifelong resource to keep going back, to reanalyze, to get further genomics insights. And then together with that, it's the expanded offer in cancer genomics, particularly. So for example, this description of the whole genome and transcriptome, so doing both DNA and RNA sequencing, but also multimodality testing in cancer and in rare disease. And also looking at some common diseases in a way that we haven't done to date. So that sort of brings it all together. I think our next step together, Nicola, will be a round table that Rich and myself will be organising to really drill down into that 50% and to put the evidence we can alongside it and understand where the extra evidence will be generated, whether that's through the Genomic Medicine Service and what it's going to do, or whether it's through other initiatives that are happening in this country. And we shouldn't forget that our Future Health will be collecting a cohort of 5 million patients. They've already produce polygenic risk scores on 650,000. So it gives us a good resource, and Vin may talk about this a little bit more in a minute, about the proposed study between Our Future Health and NHS England and others to understand how we could truly expand polygenic risk scores for preventative and population-based health. So that's just a starter, Nicola, for 10.
Thank you. So, I mean, you're talking a lot about what's come up initially a bit about the scaling and providing the evidence that we can drive that through. Vin, I know that you've been deeply involved in the 10-year plan process, a lot in the life sciences plan and the innovation side of that. It's very exciting for us at Genomics England to hear that genomics is a really strong part of that. Can you talk a little bit about, without sort of giving away any big announcements, so I realise this challenge, about how genomics is going to drive some of those 3 big shifts in the NHS that we hear about, and also, you know, tell us about how Genomics England is going to be front and centre on that, and the work of everybody who's here. You know, not a big ask there, but we really want to hear about it.
So first, I'm Vin. I'm the National Director for Transformation in NHS England. I'm a paediatrician by background from Birmingham Children's Hospital in Great Ormond Street. So I've spent a good part of my clinical career caring for children, particularly with rare diseases, as well as other things. So if I kind of take a step back to take the helicopter view and give you a sense of the context in which the 10-year health plan's been written. So firstly, we had the spending review last week, which, you know, was very welcome that there was a significant investment from government in health, by which I include both the NHS and Genomics England. And if you go back and you read the Office of Budget Responsibilities medium-term forecast that they published last September, they say that if health spending keeps rising by 3.5% per year, that puts us on a completely unsustainable path of national debt. So I think, you know, there was a lot of news last week, wasn't it, about the NHS being 40% of overall government spending. So the OBR says there's only 2 ways that we can turn the corner on that very rapid rise in spend. One is by the NHS being more productive, which is a big commitment. I think the government's been quite open about, and Genomics can help with that. And then the second bit is about increasing healthy life expectancy, so that we have more people who stay in the workforce, who pay more tax, and we reduce the benefits bill. And actually there's something quite existential then, I think, about driving economic growth, because generally speaking, when the economy does well, the public sector does well, and when the economy does badly, the public sector does badly. And so all the work that we're doing in both research and in industry collaboration and in the delivery of genomics care is going to be critical, actually, at quite an existential level if you sit back and look at it. So the second thing is in the 10-year plan, I've been lucky enough to be involved in drafting 2 chapters, one on digital to analog and the other on innovation, research and life sciences. So I think the whole plan will be built around these 3 big shifts that the government talks about. You know, so the sort of sickness to prevention thing is all about increasing healthy life expectancy. Currently what we're doing is fishing people out of the river downstream. We need to move upstream and stop people from falling in the river in the first place, and that's partly what the polygenic risk scores that Sue's just been talking about will be about. The second bit is about the shift from hospitals into community settings. So for most of us, our health doesn't exist in a hospital, it exists in a neighbourhood or in your family or in your home and in your street. And so I think we'll see a big commitment in the plan to delivering more care in community-based neighbourhood settings, so that hospitals are really reserved for the very sickest people who need the most advanced diagnostics or need high-end surgery or intensive care or treatment. Now what that then means in practice is that the delivery model to deliver the 50% of care that Sue's talking about is going to have to be delivered in neighbourhoods, and we're going to have to deliver our care model in that way, make sure that we build capability in primary care to deliver care that's basically informed by genomics in the way that Sue's described. Part of that will be the availability of data. And so the Secretary of State has already announced something called the single patient record. So it's a record where you can see all of the data about you, regardless of where the care setting is, so that everyone's got the same information. It means no more repeating your story. and it potentially also means the ability to read right into your record, so you can check for inaccuracies, you can upload information from your own diagnostics and so on. So what that means, I think, is that what we're exploring at the moment is what does that mean for the data infrastructure we need for genomics. So we're going to be building a unified genomics record. We wouldn't want the entire genomics record to be in a single patient record, but we will need a connection between them, because that will be the vehicle by which people will be able to see their record, and therefore that will inform their own understanding of their own risk, and also the lifestyle changes or the pharmacogenomic changes that they might want to make. And then the final one of those big shifts, I think, is the big one about analog to digital, and that's where, like, the single patient record, the availability of data, unified genomics. So I think that's how, for my mind, it all fits together. There's an economic argument, there's a very practical argument, I think, about shifting from our focus over the last few years. We need to press on with all the work we've done in cancer and in rare diseases, but actually this is about democratizing genomics now, so it's available to everyone.
Well, there's quite a lot there to unpack. So, I mean, maybe we should first start with thinking about some of the sort of growth opportunities. Wes Streeting has been very clear, and the Prime Minister and others, that this is a key priority. The UK has always led in life sciences and in growth. So, I mean, where and in what specific areas do you see opportunities for the genomics sector stimulating growth in the life sciences industry and at the same time improving patient outcomes? Because this is sort of the golden thread, isn't it, where the two hang together, and we've seen this so often in the UK. I mean, maybe Sue, from your experience, you might want to start, and then Vin, you can talk about kind of some of the strategic priorities that we're leaning into heavily, because this gives not only UK competitiveness, but also quick benefits to patients having access to therapies.
So just to start this conversation off, Nicola, what we've had a tremendous strength in the UK is this triumvirate, really, between academia, between the life sciences industry and the NHS. And I think what we're going to see, and Vin might want to refer to this a little bit more, is that strengthening of that triumvirate as we see, whether it's in the life sciences sector plan or the 10-year plan. And it's how we bring that to life, and there are a number of different examples in terms of how that can work. We've got plenty of examples between Genomics England and NHS England and the Genomic Medicine Service that we've done with looking at new technologies. We've seen through our genomic networks of excellence, for example, and the government partnership with Oxford Nanopore, how we've been able to develop respiratory metagenomics for the identification of pathogens and antimicrobial resistance profiling in patients who are severely ill in intensive care units, but also to use that for biosecurity and biosurveillance. And that's part of an overall partnership with with Oxford Nanopore to really drive that end-to-end pathway, and that will be continued to be expanded, for example, in the work that Genomics England has done on cancer long-read sequencing into the long-read sequencing that we will need to introduce both for rare disease patients but also for cancer patients if we're truly going to give those patients the outcomes, the diagnostic outcomes for the condition they have and for the treatment options. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing, for example, in cancer care, in the use of circulating tumour DNA and non-small cell lung cancer, we established in NHS England a pilot study with patients with that cancer accessing circulating tumour DNA testing in conjunction with 2 companies, Roche and Guardant, and that's led to technology transfers into the Royal Marsden laboratory and also into the Genomic Laboratory Hub in Manchester. So it's starting to drive, and I'm just giving a couple of examples to bring it to life really, Nicola, some new ways of working with industry. And through our genomic network examples, and that includes in pharmacogenomics, we've really leveraged the funding in research and also available in industry and also through third sector providers, for example, together with funding from NHS England to develop the evidence for adoption into the NHS in a number of unmet need areas, such as pharmacogenomics, over a 2-year period. So I think in genomics we've got a lot to build from. I think what we're going to see in the and Vin will talk about what he can do, but in the life sciences sector plan and the 10-year health plan is the acceleration of those type of partnerships.
Go on, Vin.
Sorry,
say what you can.
Follow that. So I'll speak about 2 different things. So firstly, I think one of the strongest bits of feedback we get from industry, from life sciences companies, but also from publicly funded researchers and from charity funded researchers, it takes too long to set up clinical trials in the UK. We used to be first in the world for commercial clinical trials. We're now about 9th. And of course, life sciences companies will stop investing unless we're a competitive place to do it, and that means very efficient. So there's already been announcements, and this will be strengthened, I think, in the 10-year plan. The Prime Minister has set a target of 150 days for the setup of a clinical trial to first recruitment. That is quite a challenge, I think, for the sector, and it's something we will need to work through, really, about standardising the checks and approvals and balances so we do them once nationally and not everyone's inventing their own way of doing things. So that, I think, is a big commitment. We absolutely have to deliver on that. The second area is in data. So the other thing that's been announced is the setup of something called the Health Data Research Service, because of course the other thing that researchers want is access to data. And we've got some great data sets already in the UK developed at a local level, you know, where you've got access to genomic data, the HES data, you've got prescribing data, you've got primary care data, you've got mortality data, but a lot of that's been put together through a slow, laborious process of negotiating individual data sharing agreements with individual GPs to get the data out and so on. And we can't really, I think, carry on like that, relying on lots of local agreements to do it if we're to be competitive and really get the benefit. So what we're aiming to do at national level is very deep data sets in individual populations, and we need to make sure that strategically those populations are representative of our whole population and you've got the diversity, but also in our national data set, in order that you can do more sort of epidemiological research, more surveillance type work, more clinical trials and so on, we need to develop a much more sophisticated data set. And then once you've developed the structure of the data set, you also need to be able to provide globally competitive data services. So we know that if you go to the US, you get very good services from people that have got large data sets. So it's easy, firstly, to agree how to get access to that data. It's easy to do the commercial deals. It's easy to get the analytics done. We need to develop the same capability in the UK, and we've punched below our weight. We're the only nation that has got 80 million people's records with a cradle-to-grave unique identifier in the NHS number. In the US, if you move from one health system to another, you lose all that longitudinal data. So we absolutely, I think, have to leverage that and take a quantum leap, I think, into the future by making a lot of progress in the next few years with the funding that hopefully will follow through from the 10-year plan.
Exciting. Thank you for that. And I think that you won't get a single person in this room who is not supportive of those data strategies, and there is strong political support for unlocking some of the political barriers that have historically stood in the way. So this is, I would say, a generational opportunity to drive that forward, which is hugely exciting. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've discussed this morning. So obviously we've been talking about the newborn programme, but also its longer term potential around the adult population genomics program. So taking those into account, I mean, how do you think the partnership between the NHS and Genomics England has the potential to really drive through some of these changes in the NHS with those particular programs in mind? Maybe Sue start off, and then 10-year plan man, you can go next.
We of course have, the 100,000 Genomes project to look back towards in terms of the foundations that we built for working between the NHS and between Genomics England, and particularly for taking forward something that I often refer to as hybrid research projects, whereby the recruitment is often done in the NHS, but for the adult population study that will need to look slightly differently, but there's opportunities, for example, with the over 40s health check. But having then been put through sort of sample collection and biobanking of samples into sequencing and analysis at Genomics England, really that feedback loop into the NHS, because one, it ensures at the very beginning we collect the right data, the right samples, and we know about the eligibility of the people we're trying to target this genomic intervention at. But at the back end, we're already then developing the pathways for adoption. And that's been really important in the newborn study, where we had to create 207 new clinical pathways. Could be 208, Amanda, but bear with me. But essentially, new pathways, because we may well detect asymptomatic babies where we've never had a pathway for those before. So this joint working has really meant that we've not only engaged clinicians, but we've engaged commissioners right from the very beginning in this conversation. And I'm sure as we move forward with the adult population study, so these are important proof of concept studies done with the NHS, but with the adult population study, we've got the opportunity to say, what do we actually need to look for? How might that then change the health of those individuals from age 40 onwards, but also provide the rest of the life resource, as the newborns will do for the whole of the life resource, with the ability to go backwards and forwards for analysis when things change or when evidence becomes available. So I think we've got a very good model, Nicola, for doing this. I think it's really, Genomics England have been very, very successful at getting hybrid research protocols through the HRA. And thirdly, we know that without the alignment with the NHS, it's very difficult to make the evidence for the adoption and therefore the implementation into their health service. And we will be doing that, and are doing it already on the newborn programme, but we'll be doing the same with the adult population, which will actually move into, and as part of our reprocurement of the NHS Genomic Medicine Service that's ongoing at the moment, we will be creating a population health pillar within that reprocurement to have that broader focus.
Thanks. Vin, in the wider strategic sense.
Yeah, I'll be sort of relatively brief. I think there's two things that we're giving consideration to. So one is, as findings emerge from research, what's the most effective way that we can take those findings, take the research evidence, and get regulatory approval for them? So Sue's mentioned a bit about HRA and so on, so you've got that bit. when we've got findings then that become a part of established practice, I think we all know that there's a huge challenge in the NHS about variation. We know that the inverse care law still applies, so the poorest healthcare is often offered to the populations. And really what we should be aiming for, I think, is nationally our role is not just to conduct the research and fund the research, but actually as research findings start making their way into standard of care, we need a mechanism, I think, to define what is standard of care, a way of publishing the data so that the public can clearly see where their care is meeting that standard and where it isn't, and a quality management system to support those who are not delivering the standard of care to come up to doing that. And I think we will see that as part of the focus of the plan.
Yeah. I mean, my impression from the time that I've been involved in Genomics England and others is that the relationship and the partnership and the implementation flow between GEL and the NHS is the strongest and most effective that it has ever been. But one of the things that we need to make it work is the partnership and relationship between everybody here as well, because this is not a company Genomics England thing, Genomics England only thing. It is an everybody here thing. So I wonder what your view would be about what would be most useful and most effective from the audience here to do in order to help us as we go forward implementing the very ambitious set of tasks and roles that we have just set out. What do you think are the big asks for the next 5-10 years if we want to achieve our scaling ambitions?
So I think we have to build upon the diagnostic discovery sort of focus that Genomics England have had, which means people in this room actually researching the genomes that are within the National Genomics Research Library, because it's not only the team in Genomics England that can help drive that forward, it's all the people who are researching, looking at those genomes in detail, and that will include both, not only those genomes that have come from the 100,000 Genomes Project, the NHS Genomic Medicine Service, but the newborn study, the adult population study, and we need together to ensure that the current National Genomics Research Library is expanded. I think researchers have asked for more cancer panel data, more whole exome data that's generated in the NHS, so that we make it a richer resource for researchers, whether they're looking at drug discovery, diagnostic discovery, or the potential to find patients that will fulfill the requirements of clinical trials. So, and also I think, Nicola, for people to engage as we're trying to roll out these projects that are ambitious in themselves in helping, whether it's at the front end of the pathway on recruitment or the back end in caring for patients.
Absolutely. Vin?
So firstly, I think just being with researchers just gives me grounds for hope, because if you think about the challenges I've set down, we're only going to tackle those through the research that you're doing. The second bit, I think, is if we're to really make progress. I mean, if you think about it, the bits that really matter in a 10-year plan are the first 4 years in the Parliament, the spending review. So we need to make progress quite quickly. I think it's really important to work with you to make sure that you've got what needs to be true for you to develop the very best of the research that you're doing to the very highest standards, so that then compresses, if you like, the implementation time. Because the thing that is most frustrating, I think, is when you produce research that's not of sufficient grade to then eventually make its way into practice. And so I think work with us, I think it's really key. I think, remember, this is a great national endeavour, not just for genomics and for individual patients, but actually for the future of the service. And join us in doing the best you can to produce the very highest quality research so that we can take that nationally and rapidly turn it into standards of care.
Absolutely. It's a sovereign national asset. So wherever you sit on that infinity loop, you're contributing to something exceptional and extraordinary for patients like Dave. And we're so grateful for your help. Thank you so much.